Allow the two
It's okay. It's okay. Off your mic. It's okay. Off your mic.
Chai! Now wow, people wey suppose talk truth to power don't off mic. And if we talk, now 500,000 they go sama us, call them hate speech. But fear not, Maiyegun don't come. Him go torchlight every corner, nooks and cranny of all these bad people where they spoil our country. So my people make we laugh, oh, yo, yo. Maiyegun don't come, oh, yo, yo. My people make we shout, oh, yo, yo. Maiyegun don't come, oh, yo, yo. Maiyegun don't come, man of the masses, oh, yo, yo. Maiyegun don't come, oh, yo, yo. Maiyegun diary politico, oh, yo, yo. Maiyegun don't come, oh, yo, yo. This one not the off in mind, oh, yo, yo. Maiyegun don't come, oh, yo, yo. And in the touchlight every corner, oh, yo, yo. Maiyegun don't come, oh, yo, yo. Okay, some people be they holla say they want the power. Chai. Them be promise us say we go get light and power. Nah. Them hustle sote they can't get the power. But now they know they do anything with the power. Sure. Every day, dollar just they get the higher power over naira. See them talk say make we off mind. But thank God say Maiyegun don't come. So my people make you laugh, oh, yo, yo. Maiyegun don't come, oh, yo, yo. My people make we shout, oh, yo, yo. Maiyegun don't come, oh, yo, yo. Maiyegun don't come, man of the masses, oh, yo, yo. Maiyegun don't come, oh, yo, yo. Maiyegun diary politico, oh, yo, yo. Maiyegun don't come, oh, yo, yo. This one not they off in mind, oh, yo, yo. Maiyegun don't come, oh, yo, yo. Person where they do evil, no one make person talk. Them say that Maiyegun, that man too they talk. He too they talk. Say Maiyegun diary, he they hot like pepper. But every day then they take money in bulk. Woman picking, they the street they hawk. Still them talk say make we no talk. But thank God say Maiyegun don't come. So my people make you laugh, oh, yo, yo. Maiyegun don't come, oh, yo, yo. My people make you.
Hello there.
Maiyegun làwa mọ̀, làmọ̀ tó dodo. Maiyegun làwa mọ̀, làmọ̀ tó dodo. Maiyegun ti dé o, ọ̀rẹ́ aráyé. Lórí Facebook, lórí YouTube.
Good morning to you, good afternoon to you, and good evening to you from wherever you are joining me from today. It is Maiyegun, and it is brunch time with Maiyegun live. I have reduced what I'm going to gist you this afternoon so that we can read this further. We are already getting to the interesting parts, including to the part where the plot to begin to assassinate those early freedom fighters of freedom movements in Africa by the America CIA. We're going to do that this afternoon. So share this and tell everybody that. Although there are too numerous stories, heartbreaking stories coming out of Nigeria every minute, no joke. That there are so many that Nigerians themselves, they have grown pretty much like insensitive or cold to some of these heartbreaking stories because they are just too numerous that A lot of them just decided to just pretend that they are not happening. But I do pick up few to share with you. It's also a phone-in program, but the first, the first 2 hours will be occupied by myself, right? Presenting. And the last hour of it will be yours to contribute, to share the broadcast. So good morning to you once again, and good afternoon to you. It is Maiyegun Live, and from the news on the streets, starting with that of repeated scam of APC, Egbekegbe. Remember, a lot of Nigerians believe that the reason why they are currently going through economic hardship is because they are sacrificing for a better Nigeria, renewed hope promised them by Thiefnubu. So removing subsidy was the first step, the one that triggered others. They didn't know that the idea of saying we remove subsidy was not that of Thiefnubu, it was that of IMF, World Bank. Conditions they gave to them before they could give them money, loans that they ended up using to buy themselves cars, building themselves new houses, or vice president, president, and the rest of them. The loans that you would have to pay back, because what they are trying to impress the IMF with is that no amount of money you give to us, we will pay back. Nigerians will pay. And it is not by just printing money and giving it back. Giving it back to the lenders. No, economically, right? They would have to bring out real money. They have to squeeze you, and then they tell them that they have to save money. So saving money means they should remove subsidy that the citizens enjoy, not the subsidy that they have allocated to themselves, so to say, like illegally, though, right? So people believe that they are bearing these bronze, and sometimes they appeal to him. They appeal to APC, they appeal to their criminal politicians that their problem is hunger. Our main problem is hunger. Everything is too expensive. We cannot buy food. Most of the complaints of people comes from not being able to afford food. And the majority believes that since the price of petrol goes up, definitely the price of other commodities would go up as well. Because it's like, you know why, Abi? Everyone needs transportation, including your food, before they finally get to a location where you can access it, right? So all of these factors are reasons why things have become expensive. But people who don't understand that they have been sold, and they have been sold for peanuts from a World Bank and IMF. They didn't know. So they believe somebody needed to do it. It's a policy that Nigeria will be bankrupt if we don't. Now, unfortunately, Thiefnubu told you that he removed subsidy, and that is why you are buying a liter of petrol at 700 naira. How much? That's the southern part of Nigeria. Well, that is mostly southwest part of Nigeria. The truth is, the only place you will see any normal 700, 650 naira per liter, whatever it is that they call it official, right? It will only be in the southwest Nigeria. The moment you begin to cross the bridge between Ore and Benin, by the time you start crossing over and you get to Benin, and from Benin you are going to the people who actually gives the chunk of, supposedly, who are producing the chunk of the Nigeria crude oil. Go and ask how much they are selling a liter of petrol in Delta, in Bayelsa, in Port Harcourt. And you'll be surprised that, why is that? Don't ask. So then, when you begin to go up north, the moment you start crossing Ilorin, and then you begin to go to Kogi, Niger, all those areas. Once you begin to cross, then wherever you are offered, you have to take it. So the people of Adamawa, Taraba, for the past month now, initially they said that oil marketers were on strike. I don't know. Yeah, they said those drivers who sort of truck the product to northern Nigeria, many of them have become victims of Boko Haram, Fulani terrorist kidnappings, and violence. So somehow, some of them have cut down, but they actually protested that they were no longer going to truck anything up that part of Nigeria if Nigerian government is not going to provide security for them. Nothing happened though, right? However, the people of Taraba, Adamawa, Yobe, going on like that, even up to Kaduna, especially Adamawa and Taraba, where people have actually come out to say, not only that it is very scarce to see the products, right? They are paying as much as 2,000 naira per liter. So that is what will now take us to what or why those of you who are currently still buying yours at 650, 610, 680, yeah, 700, why you should not feel like, no, that's not true, or it can be. Because here is the truth. When Thiefnubu said they removed subsidy, you know what that means, right? It simply means government no longer has a business inside fuel importation to Nigeria, other than just to do their own duty of inspecting the type of products they bring into Nigeria for safety. That is what it means that you've removed the subsidy. You are no longer part of it. So, if I have money and I want to go into the business, right, I will just approach Nigeria. This government say, I need a license. I want to import fuel to Nigeria. I say, okay, fine. So they will give me the license. So I can then go to anywhere in the world as a businessman and decide to bring the product to Nigeria. Pay all of the import this, import that, factor in all of that, the landing cost it is called. If I have 5 million liters of petrol, 10 million liters of diesel, so I have to what? Factor in how much did it cost me to get that 5 million liters from where I got it from? How much is it costing me to bring it to Nigeria with a vessel? How much is Nigeria charging me for bringing that fuel to Nigeria? And when you now factor all of that in, I'm going to just use a random example now, just figure, okay? So let's say I have 5 million liters of petrol, which everything cost me 10 billion naira to bring to Nigeria. All the cost, 10 billion. That's the cost of my business there, right? Now, I've factored everything in. Now, I need to make profit. So in that regard, I may decide to make a profit of 1 million naira or 1 billion naira as a businessman. Now, that is when I would then determine these 5 million liters. How much should I sell a liter of it to get that my 11 billion naira? 10 billion capital, 1 billion profit. Or if I want to do a charity and I feel like, oh, you know what? Oh, I just want 1 million naira gain. So that simply means, right? If the landing cost per liter around that time should come to 1,500 naira per liter. That's the meaning of true deregulation. 1,500 naira per liter. That is my landing cost. So I'm going to sell it for 1,550 naira. Remember, I don't have filling stations. I am just an importer. All of those I have to speak to or talk to are going to be those who sell them to you. So this is me now, 1,550 naira is how much I'm going to give it out from my depot to the oil marketers who are also going to truck them. Most of them will have to use their truck. I don't need to buy trucks. All I need is just a tank farm and the vessel that is going to bring my stuff to Nigeria, period. Then the marketers who are interested to load them at 1,550 naira. Now they can sell it to you for 1,800 naira per liter. considering all factors. Bad road, insecurity, bribing the police on the road, bribery here and there, or what do you call it? Tipping here and there. So at the end of the day, by the time that my petrol gets to the filling station, the final price may be 1,800 naira per liter. So if you are buying it for 600 something naira now, it's because they lied to you. IMF said, indeed, the removal of subsidy in Nigeria was to save Nigeria economy because it was one of the highest drawer, kind of put it that way. Like it is the oil importers that actually takes most of your forex, the dollars in your central bank. 70% of that goes to oil importers. And because of that, it simply means that it's either Nigeria is subsidizing the dollar exchange rate for them, or they are just paying them outrightly for the difference when they bring the product to Nigeria. So instead of selling them to you for 1,800 naira, so government says, no, people are they're gonna kill us. Okay? Or sell it to them for 610 naira or 620 naira. We'll pay the difference. So when Bokohari was there at the time, let me go back a little bit. When Goodluck Ebele Jonathan was there, Nigeria was paying, listen to this very carefully, right? It's important too. Nigeria was paying on subsidy every month. Nigeria was paying about between 50 and 60 billion naira annually, right? Nigeria was paying about 600 to 700 billion naira on subsidy, and Nigerians were buying the liter of fuel for 87 naira per liter. Now, the moment these rogues came in, Bokohari in 2016 removed subsidy. I don't know if some of you still remember, because Nigeria could not pay subsidy, so they removed it. It said, but it was a lie. 2 years later, they said Nigeria has been paying about 2 trillion naira every year for subsidy. How? How could Nigeria be paying trillions? But it's true. They inflated all of the figures within their NNPC. Not only that they were stealing Nigerian crude oil, that the money is not being remitted to Nigeria, okay? They were also scheming that whatever was the crude oil sale money, right, that should come to Nigeria, wasn't coming to Nigeria. They were using it to subsidize the imported fuel to Nigeria. But here is the scam. How the whole thing skyrocketed from under 800 billion a year, when the liter of petroleum was 87 naira per liter, to over 5 trillion naira a year on subsidy. And the liter of petroleum sold for over 200 naira per liter. The scam, how it got stretched, right? So they said, no, it was all right. In fact, Bokohari was like the best, removing the subsidy until 2 years later, 2018. We now discovered that Nigeria had paid ×3 of what Goodluck Ebele Jonathan was paying. And Nigerians were paying more. See, Nigeria paid more on subsidy, right? And Nigerians were paying more to procure the products. And the cost of living continued to skyrocket based on this. So then by the time Bokohari was done, they said Nigeria was spending 420 billion naira every month to subsidize petroleum products in Nigeria. And Nigerians were paying more at the pump. But people kind of just mellow, moved on like that. Then Thiefnubu came. Subsidy is gone. Yeah. Subsidy is gone. Nigeria is broke. We need... The liter of petroleum jumped to over 700 naira. In some places, they sold it at over 1,000 naira. And some places, over 2,000 naira per liter. No joke.
Then they started lying to the people that they were saving the money. Under a year, we have now discovered that not only that subsidy was not gone, what Thiefnubu did was to replace the people within the NNPC who were given the license of that import, whatever, the people sharing the subsidy money. That's all he did. And that took him about 3 months. By August 2023, Nigeria was not only paying subsidy, Nigeria was paying more than double of what Thiefnubu announced 3 months earlier to be gone. Bokohari was paying between 412, 420 billion naira every month for subsidy. Thiefnubu is paying over 900 billion naira right now every month for the same subsidy. And I don't understand. They are still denying it there. They still continue to go out there and say Thiefnubu saved Nigeria by removing subsidy. IMF came out and said going back to pay subsidy is dangerous for Nigeria. You need to remove it. Now, I don't know who is playing who. Maybe they just told the IMF that, listen, there's a way around it. We'll rather increase taxes, For now, we don't want people to, if we allow all these importers to sell the products just the way they feel like, right? Definitely we might have a trouble or a Kenya on our hands. So Nigeria is paying more for petrol, diesel. Dangote refinery that they told you was coming to save you. Dangote refinery don't catch fire. They seen a minor fire. However, for the past 1 week, the manager of Dangote refinery has been all over the media, social media, leveling allegations against the international oil companies operating in Nigeria. Dangote was there. Dangote's manager was like, the reason why the refinery is not working right now is because some IOCs in Nigeria, international oil companies in Nigeria, they were sabotaging Dangote refinery from getting crude oil. Quota system billionaire is talking about international oil companies. He said they are the ones who are fixing the prices of crude oil, making it difficult for Dangote to buy crude oil. Did you hear that? Are you aware of that? Yeah, in the past 1 or 2 weeks now. It's been everywhere. Don't tell me you didn't know that. That they have already said it that some mafias, oil sector mafias, they are the ones against the Dangote refinery. And the gullible captured voluntary slaves of Nigeria, they were like, are you not a Kaba yourself? You are supposed to. So they've been dropping the lamba. Aba, now oil companies, they fix crude oil prices. Now the oil companies say, make a Bokohari's government steal $10 billion of Nigeria money, gave it to Dangote to build a refinery, while half of it got laundered and stolen, unaccounted for. Is it the oil companies, international oil companies in Nigeria? Were they the ones who told you that Dangote will be buying the crude oil in Naira? Yeah? So Dangote and his guys have been in the media more than they have been in the refinery. Promise you. Dangote enjoys, I don't know if he enjoys it, but I kind of feel like though, right? He enjoys that attention. The attention that is kind of like, awkward or so weird, right? There's somebody who is living off the people's money due to the corrupt system you have in Nigeria. Is actually seen as somebody who would come and save Nigeria economy as presented by the criminal politicians who are using him and his business, I mean, his fake refinery, right? Who are using him to launder Nigeria's money and lying to Nigerians. They told us, they said, hey, Dangote refinery is not coming to break it's not coming to crash any price. Dangote refinery is a private business. It's there to make a profit, blah, 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 yen, like that. They told us. Everybody was just like, shut yeah. It no matter, shall start refining something so that we can see what all this Joe talk every year, almost every month. And go to refinery, go start this, he go start next. And the people who are actually saying this more are who? The politicians. The Abubu sellers. And then Dangote himself, who have invested so much in the media to look good than for the refinery to actually start working. He wants to look good. He wants to talk about refinery. He wants to talk about oil business. He wants to like that. A total quota system billionaire who is actually not a real businessman. He is not a real businessman, but in the Nigeria context, right, it should be. Then from nowhere, they say fire enter refinery, we be saying, no, if you start a generator. I'm just kind of, being sarcastic though. But it's disappointing, it's annoying, right? Anyway, so they say don't catch fire. So whether you catch fire or you don't catch fire, we all know that he is not coming to make your life better. Rather, why not just be the one to collect the subsidy? I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't mind. Right? We have billionaires in the UK here who are associated with the Tories, conservative here in the UK. Okay? I'm talking about billionaires. And guess where they make their money from? They make their money from, we just call, picking up multi-billion pound sterling contracts from their friends in government. They would deliver. That's how they make their money. There's a guy here in the UK, right? I can't remember his full name, something Heath or so. He's one of the guys who are like supplying the NHS in the UK. All of the NHS in the UK. So he makes his money from that. He's helping the country, right? He's not ripping the country off. Some people kind of like are so pissed off because of his utterances and all that, right? But take that out of the whole thing. He's a businessman. His business is contributory to the healthcare in the UK. He's a billionaire. That's something. But Dangote refinery, Dangote cement, Dangote rice, Dangote pasta, Dangote this or that. They are mostly packed as a means of ripping people off, mostly. He was so blessed that they gave him access to so many mineral resources in Nigeria, but he picked limestone more. Now, he has the first access. It's called the first line of refusal. First right of refusal. If he says, I don't like it, they say, okay, give it to other person in Nigeria. But yet, Nigerians pay more for cement than other African countries. So how is he helping? How is his petroleum going to help you? Then the scam continued, right? They've built tank farms. They've built a storage tanks and all of that in the refinery they are building. Now, you don't even need a refinery to have all of that tanks anyway. Because that's exactly what you will see at Apapa Wharf everywhere, where you see all of these oil tank farms. People who are bringing crude oil, bringing a finished oil to Nigeria. They don't drive them into town. They store them right there at the ports. And they begin to transport them to wherever they want. So Dangote refinery has tank farms, where Dangote refinery is also importing fuel. Dangote diesel imported, Dangote petrol imported, but they're going to be loaded from its refinery so that the cameras can capture it, and they will say, she been a Dangote refinery, don't they sell petrol? So in a country of 200 million mumus, how these guys get away with all these things so easily, so simply?
needed to be studied, honestly. So everybody wants in, they want the way out rather than these elites to provide the way out, right? They just block the whole room and then tear gas everybody, see who will die and who are those who are strong enough to survive until the next experiment. So I've seen a lot, I've seen so many, and I will continue to remind you all that none of this is going to stop if you don't stop them. Okay, so let's go look around the contraption today and see what people put out there. Okay, so here is the first one. This one is in okay, you know what, 12 years ago, Thiefnubu and their gang, they staged something called the Occupy Nigeria. Remember that? Yeah, that was the 2012 protest against the removal of subsidy in Nigeria. They brought all drama, all acts to Ojota, and they were allowed to experiment, to do that. It got some level of result because the subsidy got reinstated. The same subsidy that these rogues now kind of pretending to remove when they haven't, right? So 12 years ago, just a flashback first, okay? Because this little boy that they brought to the protest in Ojota 12 years ago, it couldn't probably be more than 12 or 13. Now, if you are going to check the boy, anybody who knows the boy today, he's no longer a boy, he's probably a man in his 20s. He was complaining about entering bus in Lagos for 30 naira to school. And his dad, when Jonathan removed subsidy and a liter of petroleum jumped to 140 naira per liter from 87 naira, that young boy was brought to Ojota by Thiefnubu and their men to say Jonathan was going to deny him education because his father can no longer afford to give him money for transportation to school. 30 naira transportation. How much is the transport in Lagos now? Well, let's go back to 12 years ago. The charlatans are now in power. The crook and the criminals are now in power. How far are you?
Okay. Ladies, colleagues on the stage.
How much did I want to spend on food? Look at our road. Our road is bad. They have all the places. And we say that there's security. Bokohari is spraying everywhere in Nigeria. And we say that there's security. There's no security in Nigeria. When God created the heaven and earth, he said, let there be light. Is there light in Nigeria?
I don't know where that young man will be today. Probably he's going to be in his maybe 22 or at most maybe 25. Our young boy there couldn't be less than 13. He's smart enough. He was quoting the Bible. When God created the world, heaven and earth, God said, let there be light. Is there light in Nigeria 12 years ago? I hope the young man is watching this now. He was right 12 years ago. And 12 years after, the people that gave him microphone have made things worse now. And I wish the young man is going to be seen and say, because this is still Lagos yesterday.
See inside my house, God, I land.
See us, 1.3 million. See. See rain. Oh, Google kill that landlord when they collect my money. See. Inside toilet. Come reach inside bedroom. See. Now rain be this rain. See my fridge. Jesus, oh, my fridge is red. Oh, hey, my fridge not spoil. See.
Erase off.
In the shadow. Mother. Hey, they say the water they reverse. You shouldn't go enter bed so.
See you. Thiefnubu. See you. Since they born me, this on things.
Oh, damn.
Laugh. Only God knows what this is.
Like I'm telling you. Jesus. Oh, see this place. This place, you get as it be. No, it's coming close. It's close.
Let's go.
I know. And if you have been to Ogun State, very well. I don't know which one is worse. Okay, between Ogun State and Edo State. Okay, I am from Ogun State. I have seen things. 12 years after I left the contraption, right? I still look back, and just yesterday, here is Ayetoro, somewhere in Ogun State, my state. Yetoro. So that is the state where the dubious Dapo, Eleyi of Ogun, is slaying and, looting. My people have not really been so lucky. We have not been. Right now, there are others who are who are like gathering and getting ready to take over from the dubious Dapo. One of them is, Yayi. Story long. And to be honest, I don't see any any break of freedom for my people yet. I don't see it. I've never seen a state accosted with selfish, self-centered, greedy humans. Like you are so heartless to the point that even the road to your own country home, in your own local government, to your own hometown, it's complete eyesore, right? But yet you're there. Years. So I don't know. I mean, like, I've never seen, but yet, right? People kind of, all of us get our own alimajiris from our different states. Too. I know those ones are alimajiri from our own states. Okay, where you see young people aspire, their aspiration in life, is to one day be appointed as a political ass licker to some of these drug addicts, ruining their lives. Do you see that gully in front of people's homes? That was supposed to be an ongoing road construction that was not to be constructed anymore, abandoned. And then it became so gully that, if anyone falls into that, Orun Renio. But it is what it is, If you go to Ota, if you go to Alagbuli, if you go to some of these, some of these local government areas that borders Lagos, you'll be like, God damn it, man. If you go to Agbara, where the state makes over 70% of our revenue from, Agbara is like the Niger Delta of Ogun State. That's where you have a lot of businesses and they pay a lot of money. So Ogun State, they go there, they collect the money, but you need to go to Agbara and then you will understand the heartlessness of man. You will understand what corruption can really do, how evil corruption is. Greed, selfishness, what it does to people. So I really do feel sorry, but one of these days, we will change this story. Because look at this. Some people have ruled Nigeria for 47 years out of 64 years. And yet, they could not make the lives of their people better. So as saying, on the street of Sanwo-Iku, on the street of Lagos, where Sanwo-Iku is in charge, take a look at this. What the northern Nigeria imported to Yoruba land. Don't forget, these are the victims of your one Nigeria too.
No. I will do it. When I get to the office, I will do it. Don't worry, I beg. Don't worry. Yeah, they become an altar of sacrifice. These are people on the road. Nigerians. Northern leaders are being ruling, controlling. But here we are. These are people. They become an altar of sacrifice in our nation, Nigeria. That is an embarrassing. It's embarrassing. These are Nigerians. Embarrassing. terrible situation. These are people. These are Nigerians. They become an altar of sacrifice. Here they are. The Northerners, altar of sacrifice. May God help us.
Ashe. So those are also victims. They are victims of your one Nigeria. Just so you remember, okay? And all of these exist. That is the mega shitty Lagos. It's not all doom and gloom, okay? As much as the news out there is for everybody to be very careful. But there are still people that are willing to take the risk of tilling the land, naturally growing our food, naturally. The most we can do is to wish them well, right? Take a look at this farmer somewhere in Oyo, ready to cultivate. The most I could really say is just to pray for him. But like I said, it's not all gloom and doom from that contraption. This one is good, isn't it?
Orí oko la wà ní ìlú báyìí pẹ̀lú àwọn katakata tí ìjọba ìpínlẹ̀ Ọ̀yọ́ gbé jáde láti ran àwọn àgbẹ̀ lọ́wọ́ láti sanwó ìdá half kí àgbẹ̀ san half. Àwọn katakata náà lè rí lórí oko tí wọ́n ń ṣiṣẹ́ báyìí, ẹ wo iṣẹ́ wọn. Àwọn àgbẹ̀ wa a ó bá wọn sọ̀rọ̀, ẹ mú sùúrù kẹ́ gbọ́rọ̀ lẹ́nu àwọn àgbẹ̀. Ìkan lára àwọn àgbẹ̀ wa lẹ̀ ń rí báyìí. Kí ni orúkọ yín?
Orúkọ mi Joseph Ọláwóore.
Kí lè ní láti sọ lórí àwọn iṣẹ́ tí wọ́n ń ṣe?
Iṣẹ́ tí wọ́n ṣe iṣẹ́ tó wà pa ni o. A dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ ìjọba gómìnà Ṣèyí Mákindé. A dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ wọn lọ́pọ̀lọpọ̀ o. Torí àwọn tó ní tractor ládùúgbò wọn ò tiẹ̀ fẹ́ ká jẹun mọ́. Torí 35,000 naira iṣẹ́ tá a ṣe sẹ́yìn 35,000 naira wọ́n ṣe é kà fún wa. A dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ gómìnà Ṣèyí Mákindé o. Pẹ̀lú tí wọ́n promise wa iṣẹ́ tó ń ṣe fún wa ó wà very very neat. Àwọn oníṣẹ́ tó nà aláì ti ní ìnàtú báyìí o. Wọ́n ti wà lóko wa báyìí tí wọ́n ń palẹ̀ ya lọ ibi tá a fẹ́ gbìn nǹkan sí. A sì rí i pé iṣẹ́ yẹn confam ní tractor méjì lọ́wọ́ lórí oko mi lọ́wọ́ báyìí bí mo ṣe ń bá yín sọ̀rọ̀. Lọ́pẹ́lọpẹ́ àwọn aláàgíríkì Mr. Toriola. So tẹ́lẹ̀ à ń sọ pé na lie but nísìnyí ó ti di na true o. Tí mo ní kókó tí mo fẹ́ sọ fún àwọn àgbẹ̀ kejì mi ni pé káwọn náà lọ rèé sanwó lápò ìjọba kí wọ́n lè jẹ irú àǹfààní tá à ń jẹ yìí o. Àwọn iṣẹ́ tractor méjì ló ṣiṣẹ́ lọ́wọ́ báyìí. Wọ́n ṣiṣẹ́ iṣẹ́ tí wọ́n dẹ̀ ṣe wà very new. Ìyẹ̀pẹ̀ ọkọ̀ wọlé gidi tó bú yẹ̀pẹ̀ kí iye tó bóyá wọ́n ṣiṣẹ́ àjàmbákù náà wọn ò látán fóko. Ó ṣe yẹ kí wọ́n ṣe náà wọ́n ṣe. A dúpẹ́ lọ́wọ́ ìjọba Ṣèyí Mákindé o. Wọ́n ṣe o. Pé inú ọdún tí ń bọ̀ Ọlọ́run jẹ́ ká lè rí irú àǹfààní báyìí jẹ ìgbénu o. A dúpẹ́ o. Orí ò ní fọ́ wọn o, ẹ̀dùn ò ní dùn wọ́n o. Àìṣe a dúpẹ́ o.
I said it's not all gloom and doom. So that's a farmer whose farm is being graded, ready for planting. And according to him, you know, it usually costs them over 50,000 naira just to hire a tractor to come and help you grade an acre of land. But with the Oyo State government, the farmers were asked to pay half, while the government paid half. And they sent all the tractors to their farm, which means they can have more land to cultivate and grow food. Like I said, with the insecurity, with the Fulani terrorists ransacking and destroying their farms and all of that, we can only wish them well. I hope they will be provided security too, because that's an investment. Currently, from the report I gathered, right, they said from that Ido axis,
as well as another farm settlement in that same Oyo state, right? They are currently cultivating more than 30,000 hectares of land. And you know, that's like that's like a 90 plot. I mean, sorry, 6 times 30. That's gonna be like yeah, that's gonna be around 360 plots of land or so. So that's what we had. No, sorry, 360,000 plot of land. Now that's a lot. And that's what we're talking about. That what is so wrong that people can't grow their food? You've got the land. These days, you don't even need to go and manually weed your land anymore. Find the land, grade the land, cultivate the food, and then the state provide the security for you. And then before you know it, the price of food, though, the food inflation of food crisis, so it can crash within a year or two if consistent, non-stop farming in a large scale level. And set of a particular set of farm produce should be what? Should be planted. No terrorists to destroy the farms. People can feed themselves. And absolutely they can. Right. I have used my first sorry, I have almost used my first hour, right? So what happened then is that we are going to go into our reading so that maybe we can take calls at some point. So it's going to be the White Malice when I get back. Okay. So let me take a break. Probably a tea break. Thank you so much, Edo, for joining me so far. I will be back in a sec. Thank you so much. So this is going to be us going into the White Malice. We're going to read it from chapter 13 through chapter 14. And to those who have been following, right? So I am going to start now, right? So let me know if the audio is still perfect. Like you can still hear me, okay? So that I'm not just talking. Then after this, if we still have that time, we will take calls as well, okay? Thank you so much. So let's get down to it. So chapter 13, American CIA agents and Kenyan CIA agents. So, as of 30th June 1960, the date set for the Congo's independence from Belgium grew ever closer. The Directorate of Plans, I'll leave it this way first. Let me see how that goes. You tell me. If it looks awkward, let me know. Or sounds awkward as well. Right? Thank you. Pulapenga. So you are here.
All right, so now this is also the road to the Congo independence, right? So let's continue. The Directorate of Plans at the CIA was carefully penetrating the region. One of the agents it used in its Congo operation was Howard Imbre, a 40-ish American from New York City, who was a veteran of the Wartime Intelligence Agency, the OSS. He joined the agency in 1948 and 5 years later became the Communist Party officer for what was then the Near Eastern African Division. The position required him to develop agents locally to report on the spread of communism within their borders. For his Congo-related work, Imbre operated under non-official cover. This was a new development for Imbre. On his earlier assignments in India, Sri Lanka, and Ethiopia, he had been attached to the US Embassy. Speaking about these posts, he noted sardonically that his diplomatic cover did little to conceal his CIA role, since the State Department officials did not want us confused with the Foreign Service. Instead of designating them with the rank of the standard FSO, Foreign Service Officer, he recalled, we were always registered as FSR, Foreign Service Reserve Officer, where everybody looked down the list and spotted us right away. The CIA had a very big operation in Addis Ababa, the Ethiopian capital, where Imbre worked from 1956 to 1958. As a matter of fact, he recalled years later, we had bugs on the Soviets, Czechs, Egyptians, and I think a Bulgarian came in. At the US Embassy, he added, there was a wing which was known by the locals as the CIA wing. In the basement, we had many tape recorders and a number of people spent their entire day translating from the various take on these things. We had a house rather far out in which the tape recorders were running night and day, causing a great deal of problems for us because we have to explain the high bill for electricity, which we did by getting somebody in the telephone company to ignore it. But serious problems were caused by the heat generated by the running of the equipment. So they repeatedly had to buy fans, which often didn't work. In addition, said Imbre, we had a central place where the telephone lines were connected to our apparatus. This was about 4 feet on the ground, and we built in the house of a former agent. We built a garage around it to make it appear as if it were a garage. And then we buried this stuff. Well, about every 4 or 5 months, they would decide to extend the telephone lines, which would mean we would have to go there, unbury the lines, put them near the surface so that they would find them, but they wouldn't find our bugs. And to do that, you have to get through Ethiopian, and which sticks like a word distinct. It was a 6-hour job getting this stuff to the surface and then getting it back in until we all hated it. It was a successful operation, Imbre reflected with his usual dry humor, except that the people never said anything much over the phone. As an NOC in the Congo, Imbre was in far more danger than he had been in his previous postings. He was required to deny any connection with the US government. Should he be exposed as a CIA agent, he would be unable to expect diplomatic immunity or any kind of protection. In this way, the government had recourse to plausible deniability. Larry Devlin was operating under official cover in the Congo, but he had operated as an NOC earlier in his CIA career. For his first post, He worked under the cover of writer for Odor Travel guys in Europe, rather, a front for agents abroad that was widely employed by the CIA in this period and which was exposed in the 1970s during the Watergate scandal. Imbre maintained absolute secrecy for most of his life about his CIA career. When the church committee investigated the role of CIA personnel, Imbre was completely invincible. But in 2001, at age 80, Imbre suddenly abandoned his commitment to secrecy. In February of that year, he gave a candid interview in his home to a high school senior. Then 4 months later, he gave a long interview to the oral historian Charles Stuart Kennedy under the auspices of the Foreign Affairs Oral History Project, which is organized by the Association for Diplomatic Studies and Training, ADST. The project's interview provide a valuable source of information about former participants in the U.S. foreign affairs since World War II. Imbre died the year after his interview with Kennedy. His obituary in the Washington Post acknowledged his role at the CIA. When Devlin published his memoir, Chief of Station, Congo, in 2007, he made no mention of Howard Imbre. However, he included Imbre's wife in his short list of acknowledgements. Ina Imbre, for locating phone numbers and arranging contacts. It is unclear why Imbre chose to reveal his CIA career in his 8th decade, but he appears to have had a strong and independent mind. A colleague in the diplomatic service described him as amusing, mischievous, a bit vicious in fact, not high-minded. He was extremely clever and gifted at languages, fluent in French, Italian, Urdu, and Hindi, and with a working knowledge of Sinhalese, Sanskrit, Portuguese, Latin, and Greek. In the interviews he gave in 2001, Imbre explained the context in which he had started work in the Congo. Africa was emerging as of 58. We saw this all coming. There was independence for all of the African regions, and we knew we had to get in there before the Soviets. This was the reason for his shift to unofficial cover. So they told us to go outside the agency, develop a business, and work at the United Nations in getting sources there and see what we could do. Imbre set up a public relations office in New York with the name Overseas Regional Service Associates, ORSA. One of those titles that are as meaningless as possible in the pursuit of the spy game, as put by a cultural historian writing about the CIA in the Cold War. Imbre's junior partner in the project was Thomas L. Goodman, formerly an explorer in Southeast Asia for a U.S. museum. The headquarters of ORSA was located at 333 East 46th Street, a newly built 20-story high-rise. It was ideally placed for the purpose of their covert work. The building was only a couple of blocks from the United Nations, which facilitated easy access to delegates and events. There were opportunities for casual meetings with United Nations delegates and staff, since the building provided office accommodation for some employees of permanent missions to the UN. It also housed the offices of some African-related organizations, such as the African Research Foundation, which received CIA funding and had activities in Nairobi. The ORSA office building was situated next door to the African American Institute, another CIA front, which similarly benefited from proximity to the UN. to establish their cover of working in Africa for Ursa, Imbre and Goodman initiated the overt projects that were clearly associated with the firm. These were featured in Fortune magazine, which published an article on their effort to support small enterprises in various African territories, matching the investments of locals with an idea for a business. In Ibadan, they facilitated the manufacturing business of rear-end carriers for bicycles. And in the Congo, they worked with a Congolese man to develop a plan for processing pharmaceuticals in Leopoldville. Other projects included the making of wax candles. The placement of the story in Fortune may have been arranged by the CIA. It was then published in Negro Digest. Imbre served as a contact in the US for CIA assets. That is, sources of intelligence who provided information but were not agency personnel who had come from Africa. One such asset was Washington Agre Jalang Okumu, a Kenyan who was brought to the US in 1958 to study at Iowa Wesleyan University on the recommendation of Tom Mboya. He was then in his early 20s, 50 years younger than Imbre. He was opposed to European colonization in Africa and was profoundly influenced by the ideals of Pan-Africanism and the vision of Nkrumah. In nearly 13 hours of interviews in 2016 with the American historian Nancy J. Jacobs, Okumu gave an account of his life and his involvement with the CIA. With Okumu's permission, Jacobs published a detailed account and analysis of the interviews. Okumu told Jacobs that he was the CIA's blue-eyed boy. His connection with the agency, he explained, had been initiated by Imbre and Goodman. They telephoned me and said they were looking for Kenyan or African and African leaders. I possibly had relationships with them. When pressed by Jacobs, he could not say much more about them. What? They didn't call me and say, here we are, CIA. They may call, and even at that time, you don't know who they are. I don't think Howard Imbre or Tom Goodman even now, even now, if they call me, would think that I know who they are. They still would want to believe that I didn't know who they are. After 40 years, do you think they will tell you? The racism Okumu encountered in the US horrified him. In Iowa, he told Jacobs, I knew I could not go to bed with me because I was afraid I would be lynched. I knew I was going to die. He eventually fled Iowa to attend Harvard University, where he enrolled in the 1959 International Student Relations Seminar, ISRS, a summer program. According to Karen P. Paget, in Patriot Betrayal, the ISRS was established as a recruiting vehicle by the CIA in 1953. It was first directed by CIA employee Ted Harris, who had been the National Student Association's president in the late 1940s and went on to become AMSAC's associate director. Harvard University, which has been described as having a cozy relationship with the CIA over the years, was where Larry Devlin, a student in international relations, was recruited to the agency. He didn't finish his degree, but went directly into the Office of Policy Coordination, OPC, the covert operation wing of the CIA at that time. The ISRS
which Okumu attended in 1959, gave the CIA time to conduct background security checks, explains Faget. Okumu evidently met the criteria, regardless of his weak grades from Iowa. It was the sponsorship of the CIA, he told Jacobs, which then got him into undergraduate studies at Harvard. He received some funding from the CIA Front, the African American Institute. Okumu explained to Jacobs the nature of his ambitions and great hopes at that time. I had a burning desire to get education and come back as a leader of my country. But this was not to be. When he returned to Kenya, he worked for a railway parastatal and then for the government, but was imprisoned in 1968 for alleged corruption. My life was mixed up, he said. In the relationship between Tom Mboya and Ogenga Odinga, and that mix-up ruined my life forever. I was never able later to pursue a career and stick to it without being hit up by the powerful friends or enemies of either side. The Kenyan government may have had another reason to turn sour on Okumu, suggests Jacobs, that he had continued his connection with the CIA while working for the railway parastatal. After his release from prison, Okumu worked as a commercial attaché in the U.S. Embassy in Nairobi for half a year. He left Kenya in 1971 to work for the United Nations Industrial Development Organization in Vienna, where he stayed for 15 years. While he worked for UNIDO, he became involved in secret negotiation between B.J. Vorster, the Prime Minister of Apartheid South Africa, and Julius Nyerere, the President of Tanzania, in the mid-1970s. This involved secret visits to Pretoria, arranged by the South African Bureau of State Security, BOSS, an organization that sought to crush resistance to white minority rule with brutality and murder. It is unclear how Okumu became entangled in these developments and to what extent the CIA may have played a role. Jacobs illustrates our article with a photograph from August 1976 showing Okumu with Vorster, with another South African government official, and with Hendrik van der Berg, the head of BOSS. Another photograph shows Okumu in 1977 sitting in the company of Ian Smith, the Prime Minister of the illegal and deeply racist government of Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. Okumu moved into the public arena and the news in 1994 as the mediator who brought the Inkatha Freedom Party of Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the Zulu leader, into South Africa's first democratic election. The CIA may have been operating in the shadows of these negotiations. In June 1991, Buthelezi had announced to journalists that he had met with the head of the Central Intelligence Agency in Washington. Okumu received widespread acclaim for his role as mediator. Some doubts have been cast on his importance, on the grounds that the forces leading Buthelezi into the election were much bigger. It has been suggested that Okumu's intervention was limited to that of a face-saving device for the IFP leader. If so, it would nonetheless have made a valuable contribution to the outcome. In the judgments of Jacobs, Okumu was an unreliable witness. She describes him as an opportunistic and shadowy go-between for hire by white American, South African, and British conservative Christians. However, much of the information he gave about his dealings with the CIA appears to be accurate. It is backed up by his references to Howard Imbre and Thomas Goodman. Having set up UNSA, Howard Imbre spent most of his time at the United Nations UN, visiting Africans and encouraging them. But soon, the whole thing changed because they sent me out to Leopoldville. I guess it was in April and May of 1960 to help with the CIA station. This work involved developing sources for the oncoming independence of the Congo, and I did all sorts of jobs along the chief of station and a couple of other guys. He left the Congo shortly after independence on 30th June. The objectives of the agency in pre-independence Congo were set out clearly in a CIA paper titled CIA Position in Belgian Congo. Reply: political actions and operations. The paper was not dated, but its provenance reveals it was produced in 1960, evidently in the period leading up to the end of June. Using the acronym KUBRK, that's a KUBRK, to refer to the agency, it noted the role of KUBRK in the Belgian Congo during the period prior to 30th June 1960 should be to ensure that U.S. aims for the area, both the Congo and the other parts of the continent, whose relationship with the Congo will affect our aims, can be implemented. These aims were made explicit. The election of a government oriented to the West and friendly to the US, and the identification, isolation, and exclusion of groups that were supported by or oriented towards the Soviet bloc. In order to assist the election of a government oriented to the West, Imbre was passing money most of the time to people in the Congo. Yes, he told Charles Stuart Kennedy, I was in hotels and dealing with the people the best we could and passing out money. One of my people, he added, was Al Kanaroge, who was to play a larger part with the Bulaba element. What the heck? Bulaba element. Who are the Bulabas? Blue, Bulaba. Thiefnubu is a CIA asset as well, right? They have a compromise on him, okay? So Thiefnubu is a drug dealer that was supposed to be jailed in the US, but he got turned and he became a recruited CIA asset. And he is the president of Nigeria today. He says something about Bulaba. So there's something actually called Bulaba. Bulaba, blue.
If we lend ourselves to innovation, we can create wonders. Here is a successful, again, a town hall, different from blue, Bulaba.
Bulaba. That's something. Anyway, Sha. So going forward, in order to assist the elections, okay, I've kind of passed that, right? Okay, I was at where I mentioned Bulaba, so let's take that again, okay? So this was Imbre talking, okay? He said, I was in hotels and dealing with the people the best we could and passing out money. One of my people, he added, was Al Kanaroge, who was to play a larger part with the Bulaba element. Here, the transcriber of the interview appears to have misunderstood Imbre's pronunciation of the name
of Albert Kalonji, who was the leader of MNC-K. Heavily influenced by the CIA, Kalonji became an increasingly bitter enemy of Lumumba. Imbre was also passing out money and talking with Cyril Adola, who became the prime minister. Other recipients were Victor Nendaka, Joseph Elio, and Justin Bomboko. It is unclear to what extent Imbre was in contact with Joseph Disera Mobutu. When asked, how about Mobutu? Was he a figure while you were there? When you were there? Imbre replied, no. That was about 62 or 63. Given that Mobutu was one of the politicians benefiting from the CIA support throughout this period, it is possible that Imbre did not want to admit that he had cultivated him. It is evident from his interview with Kennedy that he had a very low opinion of Mobutu. Making a reference to Mobutu, Mugabe, see, he said, making a reference to them, he said, Mobutu, Mugabe, they are all thieves. He also had a low opinion of Kasavubu. Never a terribly important character, just wishy-washy. It is also unclear whether or not Imbre passed funds to Lumumba. Right up to the last fortnight before independence, John D. Tomlinson, the U.S. Consul General in Leopoldville, took the view that Lumumba should be cultivated. In a telegram to the State Department, Tomlinson argued that there would be widespread chaos if a government of national unity, including Lumumba, cannot be formed. Lumumba, he said, should be included in American plans for the new Congolese government. Untrustworthy and unreliable as Lumumba is, and despite the fear of him by other leaders, we see no better alternative on the horizon than a government built around him. Preferably a government embracing the other major parties with an appropriate cut in the pie, he argued. If the wherewithal is immediately provided in the form of substantial financial aid by the Belgians and ourselves, together with our ICA program, the International Cooperation Administration, the predecessor until 1961 of the Agency for International Development, by the way, there is as good a chance as any of keeping such a government reasonably oriented towards the West. Imbre described the process of handing out funds to promising individuals. In quote, so we are dealing with all of these people and passing out a lot of pittances. It wasn't a lot of money. We were passing out money to enable them to form their political cadres and get around the country and talk. The process required a great deal of travel, but this was not difficult, said Imbre, because the Belgians had made an infrastructure that was unbelievable between the river traffic and the road traffic of at least 50,000 miles of paved roads. Another advantage appreciated by Imbre was his close friends and his close friendship with Claire Hayes Timberlake, the American diplomat who arrived after the Congo's independence to take over from Tomlinson. His role was that of U.S. ambassador. The embassy had replaced the consulate general after independence, as the Congo was now self-governing. Timberlake was appointed on 5th July and presented his credentials on 25th July. His deputy chief of mission was Robinson Rob McLeban, who had arrived in Leopoldville on 25th June, days before independence. We got tons of people at that point, said Andrew Stegman, a member of the diplomatic staff. We got 2 political officers, We got Army, Navy, and Air Force attaches. We got additional CIA personnel. We got additional administrative help. The staff suddenly crippled. Like Imbre. Timberlake was a gifted linguist. He could speak Arabic, French, German, Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish. He had joined the French service in 1930, and his service included a stint in Spain during the Civil War, when he was stationed at the U.S. consulate in the nationalist port of Vigo. Immediately after the end of World War II, he served as Assistant Chief and then Chief of the Division of African Affairs in the State Department. In 1948, Timberlake was sent as U.S. Consul to Bombay, where he met Imbre. Timberlake was the best man at Imbre's wedding, who later described them as old friends. In his interview with the high school senior, Imbre explained carefully the vital significance of the Congo to the US. We didn't want the Russians to get all of the uranium. They had uranium of their own, but we certainly didn't want them to control any of the ores that were coming out of the Congo. We did our best to prevent them. During the Civil War, we tried to prevent the Soviets from getting into a position of power anywhere on the earth. The uranium he added made the Congo important in a way that was simply not applicable to other African countries. The other African countries didn't have anything. They are bankrupt. Most of them are bankrupt. Let's see, Ivory Coast had a logging industry. Nigeria had no oil at that time. And there was no question of Nigeria as having any importance at all. Our primary task, he said, was to keep out the Soviets. Imbre insisted that the CIA did not act independently of the government, but in partnership with it. The State Department, he said, was responsible for policy. So when that policy calls for some sort of mining record of the government, right? Or any kind of an action of that sort, the State Department makes that decision that this has to be done. It turns to CIA and says, how are you going to do it for us? In response, the CIA presented a number of programs to tackle the State Department's problem. And the many organs of government meet at the National Security Council and decide that this CIA program is appropriate in accordance with the State Department's needs. He continued. At that point, the president issues a finding saying that this is in the interest of the United States. And at that point, only does the money come for CIA to operate. So CIA does not have any independent mode. The money controls them. Another CIA front in which Imbre was involved was Worldwide Information Services, a commercial news network set up in 1958 that relied on newspaper stringers. It also provided services in commercial intelligence and market research. Its headquarters were at 660 First Avenue in New York. In addition, there was a European base at 17 Rue Venet in Paris and a Japanese base in Tokyo. Like Overseas Regional Service Associates, it provided an ideal cover for CIA agents. In 1963, Imbre became Bureau Chief of Worldwide Information Services in Paris. Worldwide Information Services provided an excellent means of making contact with important individuals from Africa. I was handling all the many African agents. Record Imbre. Now, try to meet an African on the streets. Everybody in Africa, white and black, play their own role. But if a black happens to be passing through Paris, one can get at him in a cafe, a movie, wherever you like, and nobody thinks anything of it. Imbre was handling about 10 to 14 agents regularly from various parts of Africa. If anybody had a problem seeing an agent, they sent them to Paris, and Imbre would debrief them. That was my role. After Paris, he moved to Belgium and then to Rome. Both Imbre and Washington Okumu gave interviews close to the ends of their lives, revealing the sharp differences in their experiences of working for the CIA. Imbre. Okay, let's speak. Let's do that again. So Imbre was a career CIA professional with a salary, healthcare, and a pension. He appears to have enjoyed his work. He was confident and proud of what he had achieved. Okumu's work for the CIA made him feel intensely vulnerable. It was less predictable than Imbre's, much less under his own control and far more dangerous. In his interviews with Jacobs, he referred repeatedly to a fear of assassination. Okumu never lost his Pan-African ideals, which underpin his first book, Lumumba's Congo, Roots of Conflict, in 1962. The foreword was written by the Harvard professor of politics and international relations, Rupert Emerson, who described Okumu as an angry young African, too nationalist to be capable of an impartial critique of Lumumba or of decolonization. Okumu was at points to emphasize that Lumumba was the Congo's first democratically elected prime minister. Imbre, however, despised Lumumba. He believed that Lumumba had ties with the communists, although he was not a communist in terms of his ideology. Communism, said Imbre, doesn't mean terribly much in most of Africa. The political development of most of the people didn't. They were already communists at the village level. That's how they lived. In 2002, Okumu published The African Renaissance, a thick and detailed book that sets out an optimistic vision of Africa's future and advocates the development of science and technology. It refers to his association with the African Renaissance Institute based in Botswana. The book described Africa as the cradle of mankind, yet the poorest continent, which suffered the horror of the Atlantic slave trade. It sets out in detail the vision and achievements of All African People's Conference in Accra in 1958 and of Nkrumah, in quote, like Nelson Mandela. He is perhaps one of Africa's most important leaders. Nkrumah had a keen perception of the common destiny of the peoples of the third world. Though he was a Pan-Africanist, right? His vision was internationalist. In many respects, it was his understanding of the international character of the class struggle that turned him into such a forceful advocate of Pan-Africanism. Nkrumah's message of liberation, though drawn from the experience of Africa, insists Okumu is profoundly universal. Hence, his inspiration of a Black Renaissance in terms of African nationalism. Such a position was in sharp contrast with that of Okumu's handler, Howard Imbre. For Imbre,
Pan-Africanism and non-alignment were more or less the same thing as communism. Speaking about the United Nations and V.K. Krishna Menon, who was India's ambassador to the United Nations in 1956 rather, 1952 to 1962, and close to Nehru, Imbre declared, we really hated them. Then he added solely that Menon was under the anti-colonist credentials. So I'm sure he and Kwame Nkrumah got on very well. Okumu died in many ways a disappointed man. Not only do I cherish peace, he said, I toyed with the idea of building a peace institute. It was not to be, but I did not let go of the dream. When he became involved with the CIA in his early 20s, he believed doing so would enable him to follow his dreams. But the CIA had different ideas. His involvement came at a huge cost for Okumu, who was at the mercy of the agency's demands. When asked by Jacobs how long his service to the agency had lasted, he initially said from 1960 to 1988, but then he added, it goes on. They can always come back. Maybe through the back door for rent without you knowing. They don't tell you, I am sending so and so. An American friend may call you and say they want to talk to you. The CIA was always nearby. When you are CIA, Okumu told Jacobs, you are CIA. You don't stop. This is the time when you are most useful to them. So they will be at your tail every 5 minutes. You can assume they were under my bed. The Americans were everywhere. That's Okumu. That's at the end of chapter 13. Do you want us to go to part 5? The end of the end of part 4, chapter 13. Do you want us to go on to chapter 14, part 5, which is independence? Independence, that's for the Congolese. That was the slogan. Their slogan then to say independence now. I know we are not many. Do you want me to just continue reading? Instead of us like calling and all that. Reading can be therapeutic, right? And it's also very much like, it takes hard work too. Just talk that long. So normally we'll go take course, okay? Because of the timing. I'm thinking we should read that chapter 13. I'm sorry, chapter 14. And guess what? It's called The Courageous Have Won. That's the title. You said? Continue or take course. Because if I continue, it's going to take us like another half an hour. Let me see. 4, 5, 6, just 12 pages. Right? So give me a sec. This is chichi. No national cake. If they tell you say Awolokon, they are not talking about you. You know what I mean? So yeah, let us continue. I mean, we haven't even gotten to the half of the book. That's how much we have read. See, it's like we have only just read 1/3. Like we haven't even read 1/3 of the book because it's been like stretched for long. See what we still have left. This is what we have read. This is what we have left to go. See how thick. So I'll continue then, okay? So chapter 14, right? The courageous have won. This is when now the Congolese will get their independence and some other stuff's popping up, right? Here, at around the same time that Howard Imbre arrived in the Belgian Congo, Joseph Kapasele
and African jazz arrived home from Europe. With them came a Belgian jazz drummer, Charles Hinault, who had been recruited to the group. He was delighted by the tremendous enthusiasm of the band's homecoming welcome. They crossed the river from Brazzaville, where their flight from Paris had landed, to Leopoldville. Then, to Hinault's astonishment, he saw that cars were waiting for us. And we rode around all of Leopoldville. Oh, la, la, la. The modern city and the old city. People were screaming. They threw flowers at us. It was crazy. It was crazy. He said that twice. It was almost like a president's motorcade. It was incredible. And the horns and the noise as though there was some big wedding going on. Kapasele's song, Independence Cha-Cha, which he had composed in Brussels to celebrate the agreement struck at the round table, seemed to flow in overlapping waves from every record player and sound system in the city. Kapasele, who supported Lumumba, took him around town in his big white convertible. But like other Congolese musicians, he chose not to take sides in the lyrics of his songs. Instead, they celebrated the imminence of independence and urged unity. In the weeks leading up to the elections, various political parties presented to the public their candidates for the new Chamber of Deputies. MNCL was one of the few parties not to identify with any one ethnic group, but to campaign on a platform of national unity. The Parti Solidaire Africain, PSA, led by Antoine Gizenga, took the same approach. But most of the political parties were rooted in local interests, such as Kasavubu's Abako. Nkrumah urged Lumumba to prioritize the need for unity. He believed that women could play an important role in this process by bringing people together. He therefore asked Madame André Loin, a political activist and feminist from Congo-Brazzaville, to go to the Belgian Congo to make a call to African women to help bring the men together, setting aside the old quarrels between peoples. Loin, the daughter of a very young Banzeri woman and a French businessman, had been placed as a child in the 1920s in a Roman Catholic orphanage in Brazzaville. She had been mistreated by the nuns, who viewed her interracial origin as a sin. As an adult, she found it a struggle to define herself. I am not white. I am not black. She said, finally, I am an African. After the independence of Guinea in 1958, she went to live there, trying to support the new nation as it dealt with the hardship created by French's angry departure. There she met Kwame Nkrumah through Sekou Touré, Guinea's president. Loin and Nkrumah swiftly developed a deep admiration for each other. Through her friendships with Nkrumah and Touré, Loin was introduced in Conakry to Antoine Gizenga, who had just returned to Africa from a visit to Moscow, Berlin, Bonn, and Paris. Gizenga had been ordained as a Catholic priest in 1957 and had run a parish in his home region of Kwilu, but then left the priesthood. A man of few words, he had none of Lumumba's charisma or popular appeal, but was respected by many Congolese for his keen sense of justice and his honesty. He habitually wore dark glasses
which gave him a sinister appearance to those who had reason to dislike him, including Howard Imbre. Gizenga said Imbre admissively was, sorry, Gizenga said Imbre dismissively was early on what we will call it a puppet of the Soviets. They found that he had a following. He had a following in the northeast of Congo among his own tribespeople. I forget what tribe they were. But at any rate, he was able to raise an army of his own. He was immediately somebody we didn't like, Imbre said. As someone who was quiet and formal in his manner, as well as firm and reliable, a man of iron, Gizenga made a favorable impression on him. Made a favorable impression on Andre Bloin, and she, in turn, made a favorable impression on him. In his 2011 memoir, Ma vie et mes luttes, whatever that means, My Life and My Struggles, Gizenga recalled being struck that this mother of 3 children, the eldest of whom was already 20 and the youngest 4, still had an ardent desire to serve the African cause alongside progressive leaders. By then, nearly 40, Bloin was older than both Gizenga and Lumumba, who were in their mid-30s. Like Nkrumah, Gizenga was keen for Madame Bloin to go to the Congo. And while he was still in Conakry, he arranged to meet her. He wanted to obtain her husband's permission. Everything depends on your husband, who must give his consent to your departure. But she brushed this aside. Everything? She replied in exhilaration at the prospect of joining the struggle in the Congo. Everything depends on me. Who wishes to go and serve the country of my ancestors? My husband must agree. She arrived in Leopoldville in April. Bloin traveled widely through the Congo with Gizenga and other members of the PSA. By the end of May 1960, she had enrolled 45,000 female members in the feminine movement for African solidarity in the Kwango-Kwilu area. In her memoir, My Country, Africa, she described the resentment she suffered from the colonial administration, who did all they could to harass our caravan. They banned our meetings. They cut off our ferry boats. Sometimes we had to wait 2 days in the heart of the bush without food. One Congolese woman described her astonishment at watching Bloin address a meeting. She saw people dancing while Bloin stood, haranguing the crowd. Nobody has ever seen a woman like her, giving out orders to thousands of men. She thought Bloin was a white woman, or dressed in a village clothes and speaking Kikongo, a language Bloin had learned while growing up in the orphanage in Brazzaville. Herbert West, who participated in the Wilson Center Conference on the Congo in 2004, arrived the Congo in December 1959 as a young MIT field researcher in order to study the independence struggle. In the course of his research, he traveled through the territory of the Parti Solidaire Africain at the end of April, observing how the party mobilized grassroots support and handled its election campaign. He found Bloin fascinating. Who is this woman? He remembered thinking, she's wearing very fine perfumes. She has an hair of Paris about her. They became lifelong friends. After Lumumba returned to the Congo from Brussels in early 1960 to serve as one of the 6 commissioners in the lead up to independence, Gizenga took Bloin to meet him. According to her memoir, Bloin noticed that he constantly moved his fine, long, nervous arms and was at pains to make her feel welcome and comfortable. Patrick's was his characteristically natural self at our meeting with him. It was he who came to the door of his residence to receive us, laughing, his white teeth shining. He shook our hands warmly. He wore black trousers and a white shirt. With a falling step, he led us into his receiving room. Bloin felt a great deal of joy in his easy manner. The U.S. Consulate General in Newportville were deeply suspicious of Bloin and mistakenly assumed she was from Guinea. A telegram to Washington noted, Czech consul Virios and Guinean consular to PSA, Madame Bloin and other communist or leftist influences are at work, though immediate aims not clear. The Leopoldville secret police were also suspicious. One evening, in the company of Bloin and Gizenga, Lumumba produced a report from the police that referred to Bloin as a Métis woman from Guinea who was raised in Brazzaville. She is a courtesan. After having been the mistress of Sekou Touré, she became, in turn, that of Nkrumah, Tubman, Modibo Keïta, the president of Mali, and other well-known African leaders. Today, Gizenga is the favored one. This woman must not remain in the Congo. That's the police report. Yeah, a police report for on her. They wrote that she's the girlfriend of this, the woman of that, and then now Gizenga. So they suspected that I know she can't be in the Congo. That's how powerful she was. Congratulations, remarked Lumumba to Bloin as he read the reports aloud. You are a success. The Belgian secret police, the Belgian Secret Service is very concerned about you. Then he read out more of the reports. Madame Bloin has a gift for speaking. Already, she is in demand in several provinces to organize new groups of her feminine movements. She is all the more dangerous because she spawns money and sex. She is sincere and tireless, a fanatic. That's another report. Oh, sorry, from the same report. The logic of this analysis, commented Gizenga dryly, was astonishing. To the Belgian secret police, she was both a war and a saint. They had no idea how to thwart her. So Belgium wanted the government of the Congo after independence to be responsive to Belgian interests. It threw a lot of money at the Parti National du Progrès, which was a coalition of more than 20 local parties from around the country. In Katanga, commercial and mining interests, especially Union Miniere, heavily subsidized and dominated Onakat, which had been created in November 1958 and was led by Moise Tshombe. Its key policy was the secession of the province from the rest of the Congo, which would enable foreign businesses to maintain their investments. Those businesses had much to lose
So between 1950 and 1959, Junior Minier's net profits, were 31 billion Belgian francs, a sum that is equivalent to over $5.5 billion US dollars in late 2020. A British diplomat was told by a well-informed Belgian that Junior Minier had taken up the position that under no circumstances could they envisage the Katanga being governed by a central native body. They might accept a provincial puppet government. There was evidence that the Belgian government shared this position. In February 1960, a British official in Elizabethville reported to the Consul General in Leopoldville that the secession of the Katanga will be inevitable and easy. Indeed, some go as far as to say that this is just the result the Belgian government hoped from a deliberate and Machiavellian policy. Now the election. The election took place between 11th and 22nd of May. For the first time in the history of the colony, all adult male citizens 21 and over were enrolled to vote. In Belgium, women had voted for the first time in parliamentary election in 1949. It was one of the last Western European countries to give women the right to vote. But in 1960, this right was kept from Congolese women. Imagine, you know that somehow you should know something, that the colonialists themselves, they never really wanted any right for women. Magna Carta didn't even come to effect in the UK, I think, until 1920s. UK, where they colonized all over the world, though. So women's rights or women's rights in the Western world was like a no rights. Women used to be properties of men in this West. Yeah, this same West. Women used to be their properties. You know, you could trade up a woman, you could pick them up anytime, you could dump them off. And because of women were not really, they didn't have access to their own wealth then, right? So they depended mostly on the wealth of men. So they just had to endure. And that's how much, to the point that they didn't see women as intelligent enough to decide or choose during an election. No joke. And you see how some of them in the Arab countries today. Okay, all these ancient archaic traditions and all of that, which actually became law. You know, anciently they believed that women don't have intelligence to decide on something. Do you know that? Around that time, when the Europe, these European countries, so when they were treating their women like properties, Africans, we were treating our women as royalties. Women were owning properties. Women were owning, in fact, we were crowning women as head of communities. Women were leading war in Africa. Women, we have women warriors. But got all kind of they imported that European mentality later into Africa, and then still there were still some tribes and all of them who probably today treat women as properties. And I swear, right, even northern Nigeria, where they are using religion to treat women as properties, as household property, right? They used to have a lady called Queen Amina of Sheba. That was a woman who led. Just so you know the role of women in that community before the Fulanis and the rest of them came. Do you understand? So you see a local girl who grew up to become a warrior. Not just that, she became a queen of her people. I don't know, I just thought I should tell you that, because it's part of their story here. So in Congo, not until 1949, women are not allowed to make any decision like voting. Just remember that. You get that? So let's continue though. Now, they said since no single party had sufficient seats to govern on its own, it was necessary to form a government of national unity. The Belgian Minister of African Affairs, W.J. Ganshoff, Van der Meersch, who was in the Congo to supervise negotiations, promptly nominated Kasavubu to form a government. His nomination had the official support of King Baudouin. Lumumba angrily pointed out that this was wholly improper. At a press conference in mid-June, he exclaimed, in accordance with democratic principles, it is the MNC, the party which won more votes than any other in the election, that should form the government. The king of the Belgians should call upon the MNC to form the government. The MNC should have the right to call on minority parties to consolidate its majority. But what? He asked in frustration. What is happening today? He was suspicious. He said that the Belgian government and the royal palace are absolutely determined to keep the MNC out of power. They are now urging minority groups to form a coalition on an artificial basis so as to appoint a puppet government, which I swear the people will reject tomorrow if these maneuvers behind these scenes succeed. Lumumba. But in any case, Kasavubu was unable to form a government. He was defeated on straight vote 3 times running in the Chamber of Deputies. Lumumba's MNCL successfully entered into a coalition with the PSA, CEREA, and other parties to obtain a working majority. Baudouin had therefore no choice but to recognize Lumumba as prime minister. In the lead up to the elections, Joseph Desire Mobutu had remained in Brussels as head of the MNCL office. At Lumumba's request. Now, he was back in the Congo, and Lumumba gave him the office of Secretary of State to the presidency, a key position. Antoine Gizenga was appointed Deputy Prime Minister. Justin Bomboko was appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs. Aniset Kashamura, the co-founder of Syria, was appointed Minister of Information and Cultural Affairs. And Thomas Kanza was made UN Ambassador with ministerial status. Andre Blouin was appointed to Chief of Protocol in the cabinet. She remained a member of Lumumba's inner circle as she had been before the election, working closely with him. Some members of the press dubbed them Team Lumum Blouin. From Accra, Nkrumah was monitoring developments and sending advice through his personal envoy in the Congo. Andrew Yaw, that is Andrew Yaw K. Jane, our names there. Anyway, a businessman well known for his discretion. Nkrumah urged Lumumba to facilitate the election of Kasavubu as head of state on the grounds that the Bakongo people were too important to be thrust aside. Lumumba followed his advice. Joseph Leo was appointed president of the Senate. He was one of the politicians being passed money by Imbre. A sharp we followed, recalled Imbre with contempt in one of the 2 interviews he gave in 2001, was named Joseph Laho as aired by transcriber, who I think was demented. Senior figures in Washington were also watching closely. Although concerned about the election of Lumumba, they regarded the presidency of Elio as a good outcome. At a meeting of the National Security Council, Charles P. Cabell, an Air Force general who was deputy director of the CIA, mentioned briefly the fact of the election of Joseph Eleo to the presidency of the Congo Senate. He expressed satisfaction at the influence of the CIA through the disbursement of funds to individuals such as Eleo. He reminded those at the meeting that Eleo was already under some degree of influence by the US. We may, he said, have secured some influence with this potentially useful individual. On 29 June 1960, King Baudouin arrived in the Congo for the ceremony of independence the following day. As he was driven from the airport, his entourage slowed down to allow him to stand up and salute the flag of an honor guard of the Force Publique by the side of the road. Suddenly, a smartly dressed man named Ambroise Boimbo, a former soldier proudly wearing his medals, ran out of the crowd lining the roads and snatched Baudouin's sword out of his scabbard. This was not intended as an act of personal aggression against Baudouin, but as a powerful symbol of the transfer of power. Wow. The German photojournalist Robert Lebeck, who was there at that moment, took a series of photographs to record the episode. Boimbo was wrestled to the ground by Belgian and Congolese gendarmes and thrown into a police jeep. He was apparently released the next day. The morning of 30th June 1960 in Leopoldville was cool and clear. Guns fired a salute to proclaim freedom for the country's 14 million people. The ceremony of independence took place in the House of Parliament, the Palais de la Nation, which faced the Congo River with a view of Brazzaville on the opposite bank. In front of the building was a monument to Leopold II, which the Congolese attending the ceremony were obliged to pass on their way inside. Once inside, they had to pass a bronze bust of Leopold II. All were painful reminders of the Congo's history. Eve Blouin, Andre Blouin's daughter, who was then a child, remembers the day vividly. I climbed up the tamarind tree, shading our courtyard to witness the madness in the streets. Crowds of Belgians and Congolese had gathered to see the youthful King Baudouin the First, King Baudouin the First, who had come to the Congo for the occasion. From the highest branches, we could see the convoy of official black convertible cars following King Baudouin to the St. Anne Cathedral or St. Anne Cathedral for the Te Deum celebration before heading to the Palais de la Nation, where the official and solemn ceremony of independence will take place. She further recalls, the speakers in the streets of Leopoldville blasted the popular song Independence Cha-Cha, Independence Cha-Cha by Grand Kale and his African Jazz Band. Guests at Palais de la Nation included Ralph Bonche, who attended as the representatives of the United Nations, just as he had done at Independence of Ghana in Accra in 1957. There were delegations from the USSR and from the US. The American group was led by Bob Murphy, the foreign service officer who had been US ambassador to Belgium in 1949 to 1952. King Baudouin was wearing a sword which had been retrieved from Ambroise Boimbo. As he stood up to give a speech, a warm atmosphere of goodwill suffused the room. but it was instantly shattered by the king's tasteless remarks. The independence of the Congo, he declared, is formed by the outcome of the work conceived by King Leopold II's genius, undertaken by him with tenacious and continuous courage, with Belgium's perseverance. No, I don't want to read that. So this was an extraordinary claim. Today, observed the correspondence for the New York Times, who was present at the event. Barely half of the Congolese can read and write, and only 16 Congolese are university or college graduates. There are no Congolese doctors, lawyers, or engineers, and no African officers in the 25,000-man Congolese army. Doing concluded his speech in a deeply paternalistic tone. In quotes, "It is now up to you, gentlemen," he said to the Congolese in front of him, "to show that you are worthy of our confidence." Outside the Palais de la Nation, where thousands of people were following the speeches through loudspeakers, there was fury and hurt. The previous evening, Prime Minister Lumumba had accepted the maroon sash of the Order of the Crown, Belgium's highest decoration, which he was now wearing. But as he listened to Baldwin's speech, he became increasingly distressed. And as a photograph of the event shows, he furiously wrote down some notes. Baldwin's speech was followed by a diplomatic response from President Kasavubu. Then Lumumba, although he had not been included in the list of speakers, approached the microphone the day of 30th June 1960, asserted Lumumba will be known for the glorious history of our struggle for liberty. No Congolese, he insisted, would ever forget the struggle in which we have not spared our strength, our privations, our sufferings, or our blood. It was a struggle, he went on, that was indispensable for putting an end to the humiliating slavery which had been imposed on us by force. He added that colonialism had left wounds too keen and too painful to be wiped from memory. Lumumba reminded members of the new parliament of the ironies, the insults, the blows that we had to submit to morning, noon, and night because we were Negroes. Lumumba drew attention to the United Nations Charter. He declared that the Congo must be made the rallying point of all Africa, and that the nation must put an end to the oppression of free thought and give to all citizens the fundamental liberties guaranteed in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. At a number of different moments throughout the speech, the Congolese in the hall broke into applause. The Soviet diplomats, noted the New York Times correspondents, seemed to be enjoying the occasion. Baldwin, however, was deeply upset. It looked as if he was going to walk out of the hall, but he was persuaded to stay. Bob Murphy noted that the veins in his forehead stood out as indication of the violence of his feelings. Murphy condemned Lumumba for delivering an inflammatory and bitter recital of all the wrongs, real and imaginary, committed in the past by Europeans in the Congo. A few years later, Malcolm X, at the founding rally of the Organization of Afro-American Unity in Manhattan in June 1964, told his listeners about Lumumba's Independence Day speech. You should take that speech and take it up over your door. You should take that speech and tack it up over your door. This is what Lumumba said. You ain't giving us anything. Why can't you take back these scars that you put on our bodies? Can you give us back the limbs that you cut off while you were here? In a radio broadcast in New York 5 months later, Malcolm X compared the Congo with America. He said, the basic cause of most of the trouble in the Congo right now is the intervention of outsiders. Fighting that is going on over the mineral wealth of the Congo and over the strategic position that the Congo represents on the African continent. And in order to justify it, they are doing it at the expense of the Congolese by trying to make it appear that the people are savages. And I think, as one of the gentlemen mentioned earlier, if there are savages in the Congo, then there are worse savages in Mississippi, Alabama, and New York, then, and New York City, and probably some in Washington, D.C. too. Lumumba, Malcolm X believed, was the greatest black man who ever walked the African continent. The exuberance of independence in Ghana on 6th March 1957, 3 years before the independence of the Congo, had been unqualified. There was an overwhelming sense of happiness and hope for the future. Many in the crowds at the celebrations, including Ghana's guests, such as Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., wept with joy. The transfer of power from Belgium to the Congo on 30th June 1960 was similarly unforgettable. The dominant word, as recorded by the Congolese historian Ndaiwel Nziem, that's the name, was independence. Uhuru in Kiswahili, Ipwanza in Kikongo, and the Panda in Lingala. Women wore pagnes bearing the word independence, while the markets and public places reverberated with this magical word. All night long, people danced to the songs of freedom. Kabasele and African jazz had written a new song, Bilombe Bagane, Bilombe Bagane, which simply means the courageous have won. Such was the state of things yesterday. The black man knew poverty, forced labor, the whip. Wherever he said, his words met with a poor reception. Monkey, shut up. The lyrics echoed the speech given by Lumumba at the Palais de la Nation. So, but there was an edge of tension in the atmosphere. Dwayne's speech had introduced a sour taste or sour note. The tragic history of the former colony seemed to press down on the hopes of so many for the future. The American consul in Brazzaville, Alan W. Lukens, was a member of the U.S. delegation to Congo's independence celebration. I will never forget that day, he said, in a spirit of sympathy for the new nation. We were all sitting in the stands watching the parade, consisting of goose-stepping African soldiers led by Belgian, mostly Flemish, non-coms, non-commissioned officers, who were screaming at them as they went by in the parade. I said to my wife at that point, this is not going to last. They won't accept this. In the evening, Lumumba's friend, Luis Lopez,
Alvarez went on a long walk in Brazzaville, near the rapids of the Congo River. In the distance, he could see the blue and green lights of Leopoldville reflected on the river. His heart was full of joy at the independence of our Congo, he wrote later, but he was seized with thousands of fears about the immediate future of his friend, Patrice. Knowing him alone and distraught among people who had come from all over the world, staying on the north bank of the river, he wrote with emotion, I witnessed the independence of our country, seriously thinking of the battle the next days would bring. The end of chapter 14. So we have chapter 15, which is going to be where we're going to take it next. My camera will pick it up if it's not seeing my face. Yeah, that's how it's going to pick it up. But if it's seeing my face, it's going to ignore it. So that's going to be our next. Can you pick that up? Alexa, pick that up. Now, my time, see, our time is so far gone as well. So I'm just going to possibly just give it a break, okay? So we will continue from chapter 15. Thank you so much for listening, okay? We won't take calls now because there's no point. We only have just about I think I only have just about 25 minutes to go if I have to take calls, right? So let's keep all the call takings till the evening time. So thank you once again for listening. Share it. And if you have been following it from the onset, right, from when we started reading, of course now, and if you haven't, okay, you should go back and you will see, just type White Malice on Maiyegun's Diary Political, okay? You will see all the places where we have discussed this. I'm going to see you all later, okay? And until then, we're going to stay safe and take it easy. Good afternoon.
Maiyegun làwa mọ̀ làmọ̀ tó dòdòdò. Maiyegun Diary, Maiyegun #1. Maiyegun làwa mọ̀ làmọ̀ tó dòdòdò. Maiyegun Diary, Maiyegun #1. Maiyegun ti dé o, ọ̀rẹ́ ará ìlú. Maiyegun Diary, Maiyegun #1. Lórí Facebook, lórí YouTube. Maiyegun Diary, Maiyegun #1. Gbogbo bó ṣe ń lọ ni Maiyegun já wa sí. Maiyegun Diary, Maiyegun #1. Àṣírí ọ̀jẹ̀lú kì í bò níbẹ̀ o. Maiyegun Diary, Maiyegun #1. Bó bá ṣe eré àní Maiyegun máa wí. Maiyegun Diary, Maiyegun #1. Ó sì tún ṣe eré wàá gbọ́ níbẹ̀ o. Maiyegun Diary, Maiyegun #1. Maiyegun Diary, Diary Political. Maiyegun Diary, Maiyegun #1. Godfatherism kò sí lọ́rọ̀ Maiyegun. Maiyegun Diary, Maiyegun #1. Ẹ farabalẹ̀ sẹ́ o kẹgọ́rọ̀ lẹ́nu o. Maiyegun Diary, Maiyegun #1. Àní Maiyegun làwa mọ̀ tó dòdòdò. Maiyegun Diary, Maiyegun #1. Àní ẹ̀sùn rákì. Maiyegun ti dé. Maiyegun ti dé. Ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀sùn rákì. Maiyegun ti dé. Àní ẹ̀sùn rákì. Maiyegun ti dé. Lórí Facebook. Maiyegun ti dé. Àní ẹ̀sùn rákì. Maiyegun ti dé. Lórí YouTube. Maiyegun ti dé. Àní ẹ̀sùn rákì. Maiyegun ti dé. Bọ́ bàbá gbé wúrẹ́. Maiyegun máa wí. Àní ẹ̀sùn rákì. Maiyegun ti dé. bíjò ìgbádìyẹ. Maiyegun mami. Àníyàn sọ́ra jù. Maiyegun ti dé. Bí pẹ̀sìdó bá rúfin o. Maiyegun mami. Àníyàn sọ́ra jù. Maiyegun ti dé. Bí gómìnà kówó jẹ. Maiyegun mami. Àníyàn sọ́ra jù. Maiyegun ti dé. Ọlọ́pàá ti ń darí bá. Maiyegun mami. Àníyàn sọ́ra jù. Maiyegun ti dé. Aṣòfin tí ń rúfin o. Maiyegun mami. Àníyàn sọ́ra jù. Maiyegun ti dé. Òpùrọ́ olóṣèlú. Maiyegun mami. Àníyàn sọ́ra jù. Maiyegun ti dé. Ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀ súnra kì. Maiyegun ti dé. Àníyàn sọ́ra jù. Maiyegun ti dé. Maiyegun ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀ súnra kì. Maiyegun ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀ súnra kì. Ṣùgbọ́n ní bá ti ṣe èyí tó yẹ kí wọ́n ṣe, ọmọ bá dèrò ní fi wọ́n níran o. Maiyegun ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀ súnra kì. Maiyegun ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀ súnra kì. Ṣùgbọ́n ní bá ti ṣe èyí tó yẹ kí wọ́n ṣe, ọmọ bá dèrò ní fi wọ́n níran. Wọ́n fowó bẹ́ẹ̀ o. Maiyegun ó sọ pé wọ́n ò bẹ́ẹ̀. Wọ́n fowó bẹ́ẹ̀. Maiyegun ó sọ pé wọ́n ò bẹ́ẹ̀. Oníkanṣá ti ṣe èyí tó yẹ kí wọ́n ṣe fáwọn ará ìlú tó gbé wọn débẹ̀ o. Maiyegun ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀ súnra kì. Maiyegun ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀ súnra kì. Ṣùgbọ́n ní bá ti ṣe yìí tó yẹ kí wọ́n ṣe, ọmọ bá dẹ́rọ̀ ò ní fi wọ́n níran. Kì máa yí ṣe eré, ọ̀rọ̀ yìí kì í ṣe ẹ̀fẹ̀. Kì máa yí ṣe eré, ọ̀rọ̀ yìí kì í ṣe ẹ̀fẹ̀. Ẹni bá ti lè lẹ́bọ̀ lẹ́rù o, ọmọ bá dèrò kàṣàyè tú wọn síta. Maiyegun ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀ súnra kì. Maiyegun ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀ súnra kì. Ṣùgbọ́n ní bá ti ṣe yìí tó yẹ kí wọ́n ṣe, ọmọ bá dẹ́rọ̀ ò ní fi wọ́n níran. Tẹnitẹni ọmọ Maiyegun ọ̀rẹ́ ara ìlú mọ̀mọ́ ni mo fọlọ́hún ṣọ́ ẹ̀ bá kìlẹ́bù. Lóòótọ́ olódodo ìlú ọ̀tá ìlú mọ̀mọ́ ni ìwọ ṣá máa ń ṣọ́ra kò sì mọ́ bẹ̀rù. Bọ́tà ń lè rí bóníṣègùn lé káwọn mọ̀mọ́ fi ṣera wọn ni ó ti dẹrùn tí wọn ò gbọ́dọ̀ sì mọ́ bẹ̀. Èèpo ọ̀bọ lọmọ bá dérò tàjẹ́ ò gbọ́dọ̀ jẹ́, ó ti dọba lórí àbínú ẹni kò sì mọ́ fòyà. Àìsíwọ́lu ní ẹnìkẹ́ ìgbódì ẹyin lábàrá o, ó kó ẹni tó bá dán o àkàmù. Maiyegun ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀ túnra kì. Maiyegun ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀ túnra kì o. Ẹni bá ti ṣe yìí tó yẹ kí wọ́n ṣe, ọmọ bá dèrò òní fi wọ́n níran o. Maiyegun ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀ túnra kì. Maiyegun ti dé. Gbogbo ọ̀jẹ̀lú ẹ̀ súnra kì. Ṣùgbọ́n ní bá ti ṣe yìí tó yẹ kí wọ́n ṣe, ọmọ bá dẹ́rọ̀ ò ní fi wọ́n níran.